Okay, so this is the Likutei Sichos, volume 17, and it's the first Sicha on Parashas Metzora. This is a Rashi Sicha, which is mind-blowing. The Rabbi takes a Rashi, which is completely technical, and really digs very deeply into it. So let's see what's going on. This is in the beginning of Parashas Metzora. This will be in the Chitas of tomorrow, and it's describing the process of the purification of the Metzora. And it says there that they slaughter the sheep, which he brings, they slaughter the lamb, and he takes the blood, the Kohen takes the blood, and he puts it on the right tenuch, on the tenuch of the person who's coming to be purified, on the tenuch of his right ear, on the right thumb, and on the right leg. That's part of the purification process, that the blood and also later on the oil is placed on the right thumb, the right, not leg, the big toe, and on the tenuch of the right ear. Now, straight away, before we get into the Rashi, let's see what tenuch means. Let's first see the Rashi. So Rashi says like this: tenuch, the middle wall of the ear, or the middle section of the ear. The word tenuch is unknown to me, but the interpreters call it tendros. Now, amongst the Mefarshim who discuss what exactly tenuch is, there are different opinions. It seems that basically, just if you put this one on the screen, let me just hold on. Let's cast this one.
Oh.
Okay, so when Rashi says the gader ha'emtzoi, the middle section of the middle wall of the ear, most understand him to be referring to this, which is called in English the tragus. That's sort of in the middle of the ear. It's the middle section, and it sort of half blocks the whole of the ear. Some Mefarshim understand that tenuch refers to this upper section over here, which sort of the bend on the end of the ear. In this Chumash and many of the English Chumashim, they translate it as cartilage. Now, cartilage just means sort of a folded over skin, I think, or a connection of skin. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but that's the other part that some say it means. It definitely does not mean the lobe of the ear, which is the bottom part over there. And we'll see soon, it also does not mean the middle section over here, but those are other sections of the ear which are going to come up into the discussion. So now back to the Sicha. So Rashi says that tenuch means the middle wall of the ear. And then he says the word tenuch is unknown to me, but the interpreters call it tendros. So what's going on over here? First of all, let's see. We are now in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 14. Going back to Leviticus in Parashas Tzav in chapter 8, there also we have the inauguration, description of the inauguration of, this is chapter 8, verses 23, 24. We have the description of the inauguration of Aaron and his sons to be Kohanim. And again, there we have a description of the blood being put on those same body parts, Tenuch Eisen, Bayan Yadi, and Bayan Aglai. And there Rashi says nothing. So we already know, clearly we already know what the word Tenuch means. So why here is Rashi disturbed by it? Now, that is not the first time. In fact, over here by the description of, which we just described from Leviticus chapter 8 of the inauguration, so Rashi says over there that I've already described everything that it says over here. It's a repetition a lot of his repetitions of what it says in Parshas Tetzaveh, and I've already said it over there. Right? That's a comment of Rashi in chapter 8, verse 5. So let's look back in Parshas Tetzaveh. In Parshas Tetzaveh, which is Exodus chapter 29, verse 20, over there, again, that's the first time we have this description of, in Parshas Tetzaveh, it's the description of what he was going to do to Aaron when it was going to come the time. And in Parshas Tzav, it's the description of in the moment of what he was doing. So over there, in Parshas Tetzaveh, that's actually the first time that the word Tanuch appears in Scripture. And over there, Rashi tells me what it means. So if he's already told me what it means, why does he need to say it again? That's first of all, why does he need to say it again? And secondly, if we pay close attention, you'll see that it's actually not saying the same thing. It doesn't say the same thing. Rashi says that Tanuch means sechus, which is another word, another Hebrew word, not a biblical Hebrew word, a Mishnaic Hebrew word, so it's a later word. Gader ha'emtzoi shebesoicha ezen, the middle wall of the ear, shekoinen tendras, that we call it tendras. So now pay attention over here. If you put these two Rashis next to each other, you contrast them. There's a few very striking differences. So number one, he adds the word schus, but besides for that, there's no mention of I don't know what it means. Right here, Rashi says the word Tanuch is unknown to me. In Parshas Tetzaveh, Rashi wasn't disturbed with the word Tanuch. He said what it means, and right, he said it means the middle wall of the ear. He didn't add that it's not known to me. That's A. B, over there, he just says shekoinen tendros, that we refer to it as tendros. He doesn't say that the interpreters call it tendros. And in general, this whole expression, the interpreters call it tendros, is a strange, very unusual for Rashi to say such a thing. Posrim, the Hebrew word is posrim, the interpreters. It's the same word that the Torah uses when it talks about Yosef interpreting dreams, but it's not a word that we find Rashi using. Rashi usually says we call it, or belaz. In French, it's such and such, or he'll say that Menachem Chibre, Menachem Pirshe, that so and so translated this word as whatever it is. But this interpreting the word as something is something unique, which doesn't really seem to appear in other places in Rashi. So what's going on over here? Now, also, in addition to that, Rashi here says the word Tanuch is unknown to me. In addition to the fact that, why didn't he say that in Exodus? Why is he saying it here? What does he even mean that the word is unknown to me? He's telling me what the word means. So what's he saying? He's saying that I don't know what the root of the word is, or I don't know what the etymology of the word is. Like, why is that relevant? I mean, surely there's many words in Chumash which Rashi translates, and we don't necessarily know why they mean what they mean. Whatever, it's a word. A word is a word. We don't always get busy with the etymology of the word. Okay. Now, so those are the basic questions. Of course, you can imagine in the Sikha, the questions are much more elaborate, and there's some long footnotes here about it. But those are the gist. Basically, it's striking because it's a Rashi that, I'm sure hundreds of people have read. Well, you read the Rashi, so it's a bit of an unusual expression. It's not something that strikes your attention. And the Rebbe is teaching us that every single word is exact, and everything is exact and working in the method of Rashi. Now, this is very interesting what the Rebbe is about to say. I just this week was listening to a podcast, which was an interview. It was a Sfarim Chatter podcast, and it was an interview with a professor whose name slips me right now, but he has spent most of his professor years teaching and writing on the Rashbam, specifically the Rashbam's commentary to the Torah. Now, the Rashbam was actually a grandson of Rashi. And the Rashbam is known to be extreme in his reading of Chumash on Pshat, on a very literal level, much more than Rashi. Many times Rashi, the Rashbam will read something in a much more literal way than Rashi does. And this professor, so it's interesting, this professor was making the argument that actually Rashi is not Pshutei Shemikra at all. So, without the Rebbe, just any of us reading Rashi, we would never, ever in a million years come with this approach of the Rebbe that Rashi is the absolute Pshutei Shemikra, the absolute straightforward reading of the Chumash. Because Rashi is full of repetition, he's full of medrashim, of all sorts of things. Many times Rashi doesn't seem to be talking in Pshut Mikra. And the argument has been made, and this professor certainly made this argument, that when Rashi says that I'm here only to say the straightforward meaning of the pasuk, he doesn't mean to sort of tell you his modus operandi, that this is my way of doing things. He means just locally, on this particular verse, my interest is to tell you the Pshut Mikra, not the Medrash. But on the whole, I'm here to tell you the Medrash. It's interesting that in the Sikha we learned last week, there was a footnote where the Rebbe quotes the Rashbam, and the Rebbe says, that's okay, but in Pshutei Mikra, it's not like that. In other words, the Rebbe, at least in that specific scenario, the Rebbe is saying that the Rashbam is veered away from Pshutei Mikra, and in Rashi's more literal, and that the Rebbe is learning Rashi to be more literal than the Rashbam. Be that as it may, the theory that this professor presented about Rashi is from professor. He says that on every one of the 5 books, Rashi took one medrash, a specific medrash, and basically interprets. He's teaching us the book according to that medrash primarily. And so, in the book of Vayikra, the medrash that Rashi is primarily teaching us. Basically, he's teaching us the book of Vayikra according to the Medrash Toras Kohanim. Toras Kohanim is a halachic Medrash, which is quoted all over Shas, and it basically takes every single word of the pasuk and says, you learn out this, you learn out that, you learn out the other. So this professor was making the case that is the theme. The theme of Rashi for the entire book of Vayikra is to teach me Sefer Vayikra according to the Medrash Toras Kohanim. Now, what the Rebbe is about to say here is not at all the same as that, but certainly coming from that perspective, it really makes this very meaningful. What the Rebbe says over here is that the reason why Rashi says this whole awkward comment over here is specifically because he knows you maybe have the Toras Kohanim open in front of you. Why might you have the Toras Kohanim in front of you? Because Rashi keeps on quoting it in this section. And in fact, just in the, I think it's the previous pasuk, let me just check. Yeah, literally the previous Rashi is a whole long quote from Toras Kohanim. And not only that, he doesn't even say the whole quote. He just says, Talmud Loim v'chulu. He brings the first half of the quote, and then he says, etc., as in Toras Kohanim. So in the previous Rashi has almost all but actually told me, go and open a Toras Kohanim, read what it says there, and that is the interpretation of verse 13. And that is why, when it comes to this verse, which is verse 14, Rashi says this whole thing, which we're going to explain in a minute, in order specifically to tell me that the interpretation of the Toras Kohanim to this verse, verse 14, is not, I don't want to say not correct, is not Pshutei Mikra, is not the literal meaning of the straightforward meaning of the pasuk that Rashi wants me to know. So let's see, what does the Toras Kohanim say? Basically, the Toras Kohanim says like this. Remember, we had the picture before, right? So there was this part, this part of the ear, which was called the tragus, and then there's the outside part of the ear, and then there's the inside of the ear. So the Toras Kohanim reads this word tenuch as if it's a combination, sort of a merging of two words being enmeshed with each other. One of them is toich, which means the middle or inside, and the other means noich, which the Toras Kohanim says the word noich, nun vav chaf, means the height or the top of. So it's tenuch as if it's telling you it's this hybrid between inside the very middle, the center of the ear, and the top. Well, what's the bridge between those two parts? That is indeed this Geder HaEmtsoi, what was it called? The tragus, which is, it's not the very inside, it's not the very top, it's basically in the middle, and that's what this word means. So Rashi agrees that that's the translation of the word, that the word tenuch means the middle wall of the ear, or the middle section of the ear. But then the rest of Rashi, the word tenuch is unknown to me, but the interpreters call it tendros, is coming to tell me, don't get distracted by this etymological analysis of the Toras Kohanim. Okay, so let's break that down. Why is Rashi saying that from a Pshutei Shel Mikra perspective, that this doesn't work? To say that the word tenuch is a combination of the word toich and the word and the nuch is incorrect. So why is Rashi not happy with that on a Pshutei Shel Mikra perspective? Okay, so why does Rashi not like this idea that the word tenuch is the combination of toich and nuch? So the Rebbe says a few things, and especially in the footnotes here, the Rebbe goes through various places throughout Rashi's commentary where you have some analysis of the etymology of a word, and to try and create a standard by which Rashi accepts or follows. But the point is that as much as possible, Rashi is giving these words that are not identical different meanings, and he doesn't, even though sometimes there is an allowance for it. I'll just give one example. In last week's parsha, we had the name of a bird called Anofa, which is spelled Aleph Nun Pei Hey. Let's see if it's in here in English. And there Rashi says that the reason it's called Anofa is because it's a bird that gets very angry. Now, the word for anger is af. And here we have an extra nun in the middle of the af. There's a nun over there. But nevertheless, in that specific case, Rashi does accept that Anofa is the same root as the word af, which means anger. So there is some allowance for that, and there's other examples of that. But for the most part, Rashi stays away from using putting two words together. And we see over here, for example, the word af. Now, even though the word af in and of itself can mean anger, as we just saw, that Anofa is called an angry bird because it's similar to the word af, and there are certainly other cases where the word af in and of itself means anger. But nevertheless, when the pasuk says v'ruach hapecha, Rashi says that in that case the word af doesn't mean anger; it means nose, and the connection between anger and nose is because when a person is angry, he blows hot air from his nose. So, and Rashi brings numerous psukim, and Rashi describes this, that when a person becomes angry, the air comes out of his nose, he puffs air. So there also, it may have been simpler to say that it just means af means anger, but because it comes together with those words of oshan, arich, smoke or deep breaths or things like that, Rashi prefers to associate it more with nose. So the point being that we see that Rashi has a sort of very strict, in Pshutei Shel Mikra, Rashi has a strict adherence to being exact in the etymology of words. Now, here the Toras Kohanim is suggesting that the word noich means high, right? So toich means inside, noich means high. So you put it together, you get in the middle. Now, the problem is that there's two problems with saying that noich means high, the height of the ear and the Pshutei Shel Mikra level. Number one, that actually the word for noich is anoch. So there's an aleph missing over there, right? That's first of all. First of all, it's an aleph missing. And secondly, the word noich doesn't really mean high. The anoch doesn't mean high. The word anoch means the tool that is used to measure a wall. Now, because when you measure a wall, you put that tool is placed. It's like you have today also to measure, not to measure necessarily the wall, but to see if it's straight. Yeah, what's it called? A level thing? Level. So because it's placed at the height and top of the wall, so that's why that word sort of evolved into meaning high. So because the word noich is sort of distant, is removed, is distantly removed from. Noich means Anoch, and Anoch means this tool, and because this tool is placed in a high place, so therefore Rashi considers it to be too far-fetched to say that that's what the word means. So Rashi agrees that the word Tanuch refers to that part of the year. He's just saying that Loshen Tanuch Noidali, I don't. In other words, from my perspective, doesn't mean I don't know what loyadati means. I don't know what the word means. Rashi's not saying I don't know what the word means. He's saying I don't know, and perhaps nor do I care so much, of what the etymology of the word is. But I know that it's not what the Torah's Kohanim says. What the Torah's Kohanim says, which is the book you have open in front of you now, is not what the word Tanuch means. It's not the etymology of the word. Then he says, V'ha-poisrim tenders. He doesn't say like he says in Parshas Tetzaveh that in French it's tenders. He says, but those poisrim, those people who like to put things together. Now, again, poisrim is like when you interpret a dream. What do you do when you interpret a dream? You take two things that are not identical but similar, and you put them together, right? So he had 3 baskets of thing on his head. So Rashi Yosef says, oh, that means 3 days. You have 7 fat cows. Oh, that means 7 years of plenty. So if you like putting things that are similar together, if you are an interpreter, the interpreters call it tendros. Well, that makes sense because the words tendros and the words tanuch match up. They both have the ta, and they both have the na, and they both have the well, I guess that's the main similarity. They both have the tend at the beginning of it. So the fact that in French the word is tendros for that part of for what we call in English, what's it called in English? The tragus. I guess tragus might also be connected to tendros, right? Those interpreters who like similar words, the same people who say that the etymology of the word is teichanuch, they would also say that you see a similarity to the French word tendros. And the Rebbe also points here to another place in Chumash where we see that an ancient biblical word matches etymologically, actually is the root of the same word in other languages, and that is in Parshas Dvarim, where it talks about the mountain, and it says that they call it Sanir, and Rashi says that Sanir means snow, which is Chelek, and Rashi says B'loshen Ashkenaz and B'loshen Canaan, that both in Loshen Canaan, which is the language of the Torah at that time, talking about the mountain in the land of Canaan, and in German, snow is called Sanir. And that is actually very similar to the German word or the Yiddish word for snow today, which is Schnee. And it's also very similar to the English word. And here you have it right here in the Sikha. It says, and similar to the English word snow, and it spells out in Hebrew, Samach Nun Aleph Vav, which is snow, right? So you see that it's not such a far-fetched thing to say that there's a modern contemporary word which matches the word the way it is in biblical Hebrew. Actually, I have my brother, Davi, is a rabbi in Sydney, Australia, who's very into this type of stuff, and he has lists and lists of words in present-day English which are very closely related to the biblical Hebrew words. I wish I had called him before to ask him for some examples. And one example is the word fruit. How do you say fruit in Hebrew? Fruit. How do you say fruit in Hebrew? Plural of fruit. Perot. We'll change around the vowels. It's fruit. Farut. Perot. Farut. It's exactly the same letters. Fruit and perot are exactly the same letters. Anyway, there's numerous other examples. Okay, that basically brings to a close the Nigla, the sort of the Pshat part of the Sikha. And then, of course, we move on to the Yena Shel Torah. Oh, there you go. It's the tendros is the ta, the na, and also the u sound. Tendros, tenuch. Okay. All right, here you go. Here's the part about the snow. Okay, so what's the Yena Shel Torah? So the Yena Shel Torah is like this. What's the cause for Nagoyim? What's the cause of tzaras? So in Kabbalah it says that the cause of tzaras is when there is a lack, meaning there is a disproportionate synthesis between Moichin the Ima and Moichin the Abba, between Chachma and Bina. Chachma is, well, let's start with Bina. Bina is when a person's his own meditation, his contemplation, the way I internalize something. So I focus on understanding the greatness of God, let's say, and that, I mean, this is Mamish Tanya that we're learning in Chitas these days, and that brings about love and fear of God. But there is also the Chachma, which is the way which is when I'm bittul, when I put myself on the side and allow myself to be susceptible to the concept of the phenomena shining at me, just taking in what I'm being shown, not interposing into it my own perspective, my own judgments, my own way of taking it. So, right, that's a general balance in everything, that we always have to have these two approaches, these two elements, and you have to have a healthy dose, a healthy combination of them. Now, on the one hand, you don't want to mix in your own ideas. You want to be receiving the pure teachings of Torah and the pure teachings as they come from God. But then also, we're not just supposed to sit there like a tatula and just say, yeah, and nod our heads. We're supposed to invest ourselves and invest our own mind and invest our own creativity and invest our own energy in internalizing it and making it a part of us. So when that's done properly, that is a healthy dose of Chachma mixed with Bina. Tzaras comes when there is too much Bina and not enough Chachma, and the result of that is that you can get so excited about yourself and forget what it is you're excited about. So, for example, in Likutei Torah, you have this example of the person who's so excited by davening, and then after davening, he gets angry at somebody. So how does he get? If you're davening and you're so bottle and you're so not, you're full of bittul and awareness that your identity is nothing and the only true reality is God, how could you get angry with somebody after that? The answer is because there was too much focus on the bina, on the shuv, again, we have the rotzi v'shuv. Rotzi is the yearning to go out of you. Shuv, which is when I understand it and I get excited, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to cleave to that. I want to become a part of that. And then the shuv, which is the bittul, which is this is what God wants me to do. God wants me, for example, to stay here in this world and do mitzvahs here in this world. But if you have too much of yourself and not enough bittul of recognition of what the mission is, so then your excitement and passion about God can then afterwards become misplaced in misplaced religious, religious zealousness, that you get angry at somebody for not doing a mitzvah properly, right? So that's tzaras. And Metzora is when somebody has too much of the bina without enough chachma, without the bittul. So how do you fix that? The kohen has to come to the kohen. We're always emphasizing come to the kohen. The kohen is the one who provides you or helps you re-engage with the chachma. And indeed, we have the two parts of the Yatzal HaKohen or Huval HaKohen. First of all, you have to come to the Kohen. In other words, you have to come to the doctor's office and he has to teach you how to incorporate Chachma, how to incorporate Bittul, putting yourself aside into your service of God. And then once that's accomplished, Then the next stage is that the Kohen comes out to you, to Mechutz Lamachne. The Kohen goes to the very dark place, to the distant place, and shows you how to then implement the healthy combination of Chochmah and Bina into down here in this physical world, into the Mechutz Lamachne, the place void of Kedusha. How do I, as a healthy Jew, who has a healthy dose of Chochmah and a healthy dose of Bina, implement that into making this world a brighter place? That the Kohen comes out with me to teach it. So the Kohen puts it on the Tenuch Oizen. The Kohen puts it on my ear. The idea of the ear is that it's my understanding, my contemplation. So the Kohen has taught me how to have a healthy contemplation of, again, listening, understanding. It's all the same. It's all related. And Rashi says that where does this come from? And he says, Lo noidali. It's not known to me. Now, not known to me is not the same as saying I don't know it, right? That was one of the questions in the beginning of the Sikha. We're not saying I don't know it. We're saying it's not known to me. Similar, I think he brings this pasuk here. Lo noida kibar el kibenu. I think he brings it somewhere here, right? When Paro describes his dream to Yosef, that the skinny cows ate the fat cows, it says it was not known that they came into them. Now, doesn't mean it was not known. It was known. You saw them eating them. Obviously, they went in. But lo noida means that it's not recognizable. It's not discernible. It's not because, and the idea being that when lo noidali, how the Kohen accomplishes this, how I think, if I'm understanding this correctly, what he's saying is that it's something which is not known to me. It is something which has to be superimposed on me by the Kohen coming and accomplishing it for me. I believe that's what he's saying. And then this, he finishes off by saying that this is accomplished through the posrim, the interpreters. And just like in the interpreting of dream, we said interpreters means that they take two things that are different but similar, and the interpreters are able to show how the two are connected. So in the avodah of a person, that means to take the lesson or the result of the bina, which is similar but different, and match it up to the similar and different to the chokhmah, and match it up that they should be in sync with each other. And then that becomes expressed in the thumb and the foot, meaning in the hand and the leg, which is take that inspiration, the combination of the Chachma and Bina, and implement it in actually going to fulfill mitzvahs here in this world.